With the Marksmen DLC due out next week, Episode 4 explores how the slick-looking functionality of bipods plus weapon resting, along with continued tweaks to weapon sway and AI suppression, will all work to further balance Arma 3's squad gameplay. Give your weapon a rest and check your zeroing. It's GETactics Radio. I'm here with Lucky and John Bonds. Welcome both back to the show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have your guys' intellect brought to the table. We're here to talk about the Marksmen DLC. We're ahead of the game, trying to provide our feedback and give a bit of a preview about the content and game modes, improvements, upgrades, whatever you'd like to call it, however you stand on it. And this is the first DLC for Arma 3 in 2015, which is pretty exciting. They have also sneaked tidbits of game update coming out soon after, which is going to include some other elements you can stay tuned in for. And I was really excited to hear about the new terrain still being worked on. I think that's excellent if it's able to offer something new. But in the Marksman DLC, we're going to have 7 new weapons. We've got new optics coming, remote designators. The first off, I'm going to turn it to Lucky and give his take on Marksman DLC not equaling a sniper DLC and where Bohemia Interactive is really coming from with this. Really, what is the first infantry-focused DLC for Arma?
I'm just kind of expanding what I think it was Jay Crow who said on the live stream about the Marksman DLC, that a lot of us in the community have been thinking that, like, Marksman, they're going to do some cool sniper stuff and they're going to have all these advanced features, kind of the way there's an advanced flight model for flying, and it'll take into, high angle shooting and wind and etc. And he made it a little clear that this is really a Marksman DLC, not a sniper DLC. It's really about the Marksman, who is a squad member, and it's about ballistics and rifles for the squad, essentially, not just about the lone sniper and the 1,200, 2,000 meter shots. Maybe 1,200.
I guess more so it's a squad-focused DLC if you wanted to go into more like fidelity as opposed to just infantry. So they're bringing, with these new weapons, mostly DMRs and LMGs or MGs. I think there's some that might be classified as larger than the L. But you've got the optics. Obviously, the remote designators fall into that, but bipods are the biggest thing. That squad-based conflict they're really focusing in on.
Right. That, and, the variety of weapons. I think some of us were surprised that they're introducing 2 LMGs, that it's not, and that they're introducing 2 new 7.62 rifles as well, not just here's a 12.7 millimeter that will destroy a tank at 1,000 meters.
All right, so we've got 7 new weapons. The lists out there for audience are pretty available. But John, what's your favorite weapon out of the list? What is the weapon you're most excited to use and see the impact to the gameplay?
I really like the ASP because the ASVAL was one of my personal favorites in Arma 2 and Battlefield 3 and other games. Sadly not Battlefield 4. But I'm really excited about that. It's a fun weapon to use. It's an interesting physical design. And then I'm also really excited about the SPMG, the 338 M240 lookalike that's quite deadly at range as well.
So what is your guys' take on the futuristic approach on the weapons? We've known BIS has had a love for the future, and the elements of Arma 3 kind of, I think, respect what's in the past and the conventional type of gear we see, but I think it also lends to the future, not just in being held in a future date, but more like your cutting edge technology, trying to be a little different than most modern shooters out there, obviously. But is this something that you liked, or would you have liked to seen some of the traditional weapons brought in?
I don't, I'm not a real gunhead, so I'm not, I really like some of the new weapons that they've brought. I feel like some of them look a little funny, some of the modern or futuristic sort of designs, but it's interesting, it's different. And they have the big nod to the old school with the Mark 14 7.62 rifle too, which is kind of fun. That was a classic, in the Arma 2 era. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good pack. I have no complaints. The modern or futuristic factor doesn't blow my dress up, but it's cool.
That's good. That's one way to put it. I think everyone gravitates to that old school Mark 14 that's brought into it. Obviously, a well-known weapon, seems to be well loved by most out there, or at least for having a certain place. And I think I love, the types of rounds that were brought into it. Seeing the 338 is really exciting. Big plus for that. I think that personally, I would like to see some of the future models with their names being futuristic, still like relying on the creative inspiration of some of the older types, so that we would, maybe get some upgrade or a new modular look to these older weapons. But I don't know, John, your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly the community takes care of a lot of the old weapons and stuff. I'm fine with Bohemia heading the same direction that they've been heading with futuristic stuff. Typically, the people who are interested in the older weapons are already in a group where they're already having such custom content.
I thought you'd say that. And it's certainly something they have to consider, the community supporting and bringing that in. They wouldn't want any kind of overwriting content, some redundancy there.
Yeah.
So what are you guys feeling about the two new optics? We've got mid-range optics. They have a two-step zoom, I guess you could say. And the first is a AMS, and then a Kalia. And they both are, tick-based reticle, but tick marks on the AMS are a little too condensed for my liking. And I know the weapon designer, or at least the person kind of managing that, weighing in, said his favorite was the AMS. So I'm pleased to see we kind of got two different reticle designs. I think tick marks are kind of a solid way forward, as much as I like the old mill dots. And either way, great to see some new optics there, but nothing really game changing coming as far as how optics work there. But all the new weapons, I think we would agree, have some, a nice place on the battlefield. They're clearly focused for the squad-based suppression and kind of tucking the enemy down, which is another element that's definitely going to be tweaked for the future. But kind of that medium to long range tactical effect that can pretty much mean, you're going to have to use tactics in Arma in order to overcome some situation. Like, it's definitely, this being a squad based and that medium range engagement that Arma 3 kind of, or any Arma for that matter, being a little bit more of a military sandbox game, means that it's going to take some legitimate tactics to think about your fatigue in flanking the enemy, or how much you're suppressing your enemy in order to make your next move. It's definitely not easy.
Yes.
Let's head into #bipods, which has been the craziest thing, still being thrown out there, which is great. But the community had a resounding, answer to this, and that was yes, finally. Even though this were being modeled in community mods, we clearly have an effect, two effects really, both on weapon deployment, strictly related to the bipods, and then weapon resting, which is a bit more passive. Come up to any geometrical object, and you're going to be able to get support for your weapon, thereby reducing weapon sway. So first thing I'll throw out there is, these elements being introduced to Arma 3, how's that working with your fatigue and sort of the operational feedback?
Sure. So when they initially introduced fatigue, there was a lot of pushback from more casual players. I thought it was a little bit too drastic, or something was off about it. It felt like they were just always out of breath. And I think having weapon resting and bipods be a part of the core game is going to fix a lot of those complaints, because that's a very common thing to do. You're supposed to be able to rest your weapon on the ground, or deploy a bipod to fix the issue of you being fatigued, because you're not going to have to deal with that anymore. So I feel like it's something that should have been included with the fatigue in the first place, but having the fatigue out before the bipods allowed them to tweak it with more feedback. So I feel like the fatigue was their initial testing of what do we need to add to make this a full rounded solution.
An interesting question, I guess, is you're having to develop this game with fatigue that's incurred by all forces, whether you're kind of an upfront M4 guy, storming into buildings or whatnot, weapon sway also be included for that matter, and with these medium to long range weapons, I think they're trying to really answer all right, we got this fatigue, this weapon sway element that's gonna try to be as realistic as possible. Here's this crutch, or rather like a tool you can now use in order to still be effective.
Yeah,
I think it's a cool addition. They talked about the pros and cons of it, the cost benefit kind of thing of using it, and I think it's mostly a benefit. The cost is pretty low. I mean, a little extra weight and a little time to deploy and undeploy and some limitations. But I think it is a good way to let people work together. Somebody deploys and they're on Overwatch, or whether that's in a high position with a long rifle or marksman rifle or an LMG or something. It just, boy, you could be really a serious threat with one of those 338 MGs and a bipod. You could hold down a squad or two, keep a whole road clear.
That's a good point. At at a distance as well with the optics. So
Yep.
your optics you might have had before, but how effective were you due to the weapon sway or the recoil? But the bipod, in our experience testing around here, that branch has proven pretty reliable for keeping that weapon planted. And I think you're right. And what I was getting at before is it makes the battlefield decisions that much more exciting. And whenever they push that teamwork for a squad or fire team, working up, walking to an objective, choosing who's going to do what, I think that's always a good improvement for the game.
Now, if they can marry that with the AI suppression changes that they're talking about, which we haven't really seen clearly anyway yet, that will really be cool.
Yeah, so seems they've identified two, aspects of that they're going to try to work on. The first being the AI reacting, or lack thereof, to being shot, and their accuracy, not just visually, but it's something in the gameplay that I think is quite an effect. And then the second element being the intelligence of the AI and how they react. You're entering a town, you're fighting. Are they going to come straight down that angle of approach that you happen to be suppressing with your shiny new MG, bipod deployed, crazy accuracy, of course, or are they going to be smart and try to flank, move around, avoid those sectors of fire?
Yeah, there was something in that live stream that touched on it and said that the AI should react and not walk down that street that you're controlling with your MG, but I'm waiting to see it. It doesn't seem to be present in the dev branch at this point.
So would you both agree that the AI doesn't react realistically the wrong way, but that they could do more to help the AI be a bit more of a challenge in that tactical way, as opposed to making the challenge of the game, about firing straight, objective-based stuff. How does this stack up against the community-supported AI mods?
John, that's kind of more up your alley.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, the way you fight AI is different than the way that you fight players when you're planning your strategy. There's different ways of playing, and I feel like when you're fighting AI, there's certain decisions that you make that will change. I mean, one of the things is suppression. Yes, suppression sort of does things currently, even in the release build of the game. The production build, the 1.40 build, but it's nowhere near to the fact of what they're implementing now. And one of the things that, people don't realize is, yes, you can suppress in the full release version of Arma, but it's not going to be as effective as it would be against a player when you're shooting AI. And I think this is something that's definitely essential to doing co-op sessions, because now you can actually have an MMG squad sitting up on the hill suppressing AI, and it's actually going to have a significant effect versus what we have currently. And it'll change a lot of the way we play against AI.
That's an interesting depiction you've made because of they're needing to balance the AI versus some adversarial game mode where it's going to be a human player who you don't necessarily want to dip your toe into the pool that says that you have this huge accuracy penalty, or you're going to get these screen effects that are going to be crazy, affecting how well you can aim. I think that doesn't bode well for close quarter engagements. And Arma, the experience tend to be mid-range long, and then like maybe immediately close quarters. So that's going to be a tough balance for them to work out. But overall, we're excited for them to enter the arena of improving. I won't just say changing, but improving the AI and how it reacts.
That smart AI is one of the holy grails of gaming, right? And everybody's trying to make it better, and some people disagree about what better is, but and it's great that our community has people doing third-party stuff. It would be greater, or it would be nice if it was yes and that the Bohemia was really making strides, as well as third-party people adding to the mix.
All right, I would agree. So also new to the game updates coming in the pipeline, we've got new ghillie suits, new vests, which I think I heard were going to offer improved explosive protection. Am I right on that?
In general, it'll just be protection from all rounds, but yeah, I think explosive does have something to do with it.
Let's move now to improved sound and how Bohemia has been doing with, they've called it tails that they're adding to it, but the different firing that occurs in terrain. So we've got, as I understand it, they're working each weapon's sound and how that sounds in the terrain, but they're also doing a distance-based I think attenuation kind of solves both of that. As far as like firefights, as you're approaching a city, you're going to hear that at a different volume.
Yeah, and not just volume, but it's more complex than that too. The way the sound, which frequencies get to you, which is trying to model what happens in reality. And in my testing, again, don't shoot guns in real life very often, and I'm not basing it on that, but just what it seems like it should be to me. It seems like they've made some nice strides. They've caught up in some ways with the third-party audio scripting and mods that people have made. I think it's very cool that a guy with an LMG 300 meters from me sounds different, not just quieter than a guy 100 meters from me with the same MG. But if I was firing in the street, bang, 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 and then I slid off the street and into a building and firing the same rounds, and it sounds very different. You get the nice long, I think when they say tails, they mean kind of the echo reverberation cutoff. What's the term for that in music? Well, there's attack, and what's the opposite of attack?
Release.
Is that it? Sustain,
Yeah.
maybe? Maybe sustain is the word? Yeah, so they seem to have, they're putting a lot of thought into it, which is cool. That's some people would say that's trivial, and if you're a milsim, it's not trivial.
Yeah, the cool thing with the audio solutions that they're providing is, I feel like in the last year, the third-party community has actually made major strides in the audio fidelity that they've been able to produce. I think Lakesman's, I don't remember exactly his username, did a scripted solution to where he's whenever a weapon is fired, he's constantly, or I don't know if it's when the weapon's fired or if it's actively while you're moving, but he's calculating the environment around the player and figuring out what kind of quote unquote tails to add on to the weapons. And it sounded really good because it works. His solution in particular worked with almost every community sound mod out there because it was just adding a tail to the end of the existing sound effect, and it sounded really good. And it ended up being where he created just kind of this library that other content audio content creators could use, and so eventually that was integrated into JSRS as a improvement to it. And I think if this works with them and the stuff that they're introducing is extendable, it'll be awesome to see what JSRS and some of the other sound mods do with it. What I am interested in is how they're taking the approach to getting the effect. I don't know if they're doing a calculated approach to the effect, or if it's a data-driven approach to where they're editing content in the terrain. Because my concern, if it's data-driven, third-party terrains, that's going to be a problem.
So you mean like calculated on the battlefield specifically versus like a weapon?
Yeah. So I'm talking about because when that in the live stream they talked about how there's essentially, if you're thinking about Minecraft, there's biomes in Minecraft. Well, there's sort of a biome in Arma. There's a foresty area, and these different areas on the map. I'm wondering, what determines the area biome that you're in? Is that a scripted kind of calculated solution, or is that driven by data from the terrain?
Right, and that data being standard for your third-party things. They said it was progressive, so I hope that is both true of where they're drawing that data from, but also that it isn't just going to be a toggle switch. Sound, still being worked on. I think it's a great sign. That adds to the soundscape you're fighting in, sort of just that realism effect. I mean, off the top of my head, I feel like it's akin to the shaking and wind noises that we saw in the Helicopters DLC introduced, which is a real positive thing, just kind of adding that level of immersion that's really exciting. And sound in gaming just draws so many different decisions on who's beside you, what weapon they're firing, how many enemy forces are in the town ahead of you, how many can you hear firing, what direction those are coming from. So there's a lot of factors, and I think as gamers we are able to process sound very quickly and sort of make decisions on that. So it's a huge element to a game, and especially a game like Arma where there are all those decisions to having to be made, and your step around one corner versus another depending on what you hear. Are you taking that step with your gun up and ready, or not? So excellent to see sound still being worked on. All right, I mentioned ghillie suits and vests. More content coming, which is exciting to see the game being completed. Even more additional options for the player to choose from based on their role, how they want to experience Arma. New takes on the ghillie suits.
My first impression was putting on the semi-arid ghillie suit, creating a character in the editor with it, and jumping in-game on a hill, an altus, a grassy hill, and just, I think I probably literally said, wow, it looks so good. It blended so well with the terrain. I just made me want to play PvP and wear that suit and hide and not be easily seen, especially if I had one of the new ASP rifles with a silencer or something.
That's a good point, bringing in the human ability, not just that ghillie suit acting like this reminder that you're a sniper, you're sort of blending in, and that's a feeling you can sort of get when you're against the AI, right? But with grass turned off, of course. But the ghillie suits, I think, well done. They provide nice options, whether you're looking for that full getup, different terrains, colors, or the original half ghillie, which is also a nice touch. I think looks pretty slick in the urban environments.
While I haven't played multiplayer version of Endgame, just looking at the way it's set up and the multiple steps you need to accomplish, it sounds like a pretty nifty advancement on traditional multiplayer modes, and I can just say I'm hopeful that it'll be interesting. That's it.
Yeah, I like that the technology or the features that they're bringing to include these game modes, it won't just stop there, whether their game mode succeeds or not. The concept, I think, is a great direction and something that offers the community a new level of playing primarily because of the features. And John, I know you like the group management mode being brought in. There's also shared objectives, which should be interesting for mission makers to do. And is that assignable from the squad leader or some leader role there? I'm not sure if I played enough with that.
I think it should be squad leader role, or maybe it'll be commander plus squad leader, whatever. Maybe it'll be like the commander gives the squad leader command, and then the squad leader gives a squad command. Maybe it'll work like that. I don't know, but hopefully they make it in such a way that it'll be very, very easy to implement and content created missions. And the other thing with the group management is hopefully they make that really, really easy to use and implement, because it seems to be a combination of the simplicity of like the domination, you just create a group and join, combined with the flexibility of the systems where you can invite and password protect and etc. Your group, so that it's still a little more private for when you just want to play with your friends in your group.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a fantastic direction to be heading in. I think that multiplayer modes out there, especially for your public servers that aren't well managed, or the game mode may not be offer these extra options, choosing one or the other. I mean, certain game modes kind of require that teamwork to happen at the squad level, linking up with players. You need squads who are dedicated groups of friends who've played together, and they can sit in there and maybe they're sitting as private, locking it down, but that's fine. You may have another group that's operating with the open door policy, saying we're going to welcome in players. I happen to be in a great knowledge sharing mood, and I'll take you under the wing here and let's hit some objectives, like that sort of balance. So definitely a positive direction, and anything they can do to help make the player base help them make those decisions, I think is really great, and benefits every game mode out there.
Yeah, I think it also brings up another point, in particular with the focus that Bohemia is taking now. It felt like what they were focusing on initially was a lot of work on PvP. Like the whole Arma 3 initial release, I felt like was a huge improvement to PvP due to the flexibility of the player, and just how more standardized and easy it was, and less clunky the game felt. I feel like that was made huge strides in the PvP world, and in co-op. In co-op, it's extremely useful to be able to navigate around the rock without getting shot. But I feel like their focus now, they're trying to bring back their focus to co-op and AI, and that's something that I think the co-op scene's been waiting for, to see more improvements to the AI that are much more significant than the minor tweaks they've been doing here and there.
Mm-hmm. All right, John Bonds Lucky, thanks for stopping in, lending your words as usual.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to GETactics Radio. That's a wrap.